So it is the morning of the 8th of December. And so in Japanese, as we've been saying kind of over and over again, uh, Rohatsu literally means the 8th day of the 12th month. And in Japanese Zen, it is considered to be a fact. As Yasutani Roshi says, we take this as historical fact that on the morning of the 8th of December, upon seeing the morning star, that Gautama had his realization experience of oneness. So I like saying realization as opposed to enlightenment experience, because enlightenment was already there, right? He just realized the intrinsic oneness of everything. Guak, give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Great. And I was reading that in some lineages, they go by the lunar calendar. So some traditions celebrate sometime in mid-January as when they consider to be Bodhi Day. We meaning Mahayanists and Japanese Zen folks have been celebrating it, I don't know for how long time, as the 8th of December. So we had a talk last evening. Some of us were here. We collaborated, might be the word. We joined forces with Village Zendo in New York City, and Muke from there, K-E-I, gave us a little talk, and I said to Showa afterwards, it's like, well, he stole all my material, and I'm too tired to come up with a whole new talk, so I'm going to share some things, which was occurring, I think in probably all religious traditions. The stories of the tradition are told, right? That's like how things continue over time. So the story of the Buddha, I was thinking about that. I've always in the past have said that, well, this is like an archetype of all of our story. And in some ways, yes, and in some ways, no. There are probably many dissimilarities for most of us with the life of the Buddha. Few of us, any of us, were born as a prince or a princess. We're told that our father was told at birth that we were destined to be either a great statesman or a great religious leader. I don't think my dad heard that. And then, as the legend goes, we were in an environment where we were completely protected from anything that would cause us to question what life was about. So, as the legend goes, that, as the flowers in the palace fell, as we've been hearing all week long, these leaves fall. As soon as they fell down, servants skirting out and cleaning them up. Nothing to be seen that would cause the Buddha to say, to see change, to see impermanence, to see anything that wasn't beautiful. And I seriously doubt that's what any of our experience was growing up. So then, as people do in adolescence, they sort of get to questioning. I kind of want to start thinking for myself a little bit here, right? And so the Buddha goes over the wall, over the palace wall. and sees sees a sick person, sees an old person, sees a corpse, and sees a mendicant, sees some type of spiritual seeker, and is ostensibly, as the story goes, completely shocked by these things. I've never in my life encountered sickness or death or getting old. If you know, it's if we can even imagine ourselves being in such a kind of protected, naive state. So that's where all this sort of archetypal stuff, you know, we can relate to it in a way. If we think about, you know, I can remember the first I can remember the first corpse I saw, but I was probably in my 40s. And even aging, somebody said this to me recently. Oh yeah, somebody in our sitting group, that, you know, even though I know that it's true, impermanence is true, and that I'm aging, how come I still feel like I'm 19 inside? So yes, we encounter these things, but in a way we are like the Buddha. We are, it's hard to really let it in. So anyway, he sees all this, sees the spiritual seeker, and decides to basically leave. And now he's not a teenager at this point. He's already been married and has a son. And this desire to really see what life about is so intense that he leaves the palace and seeks several different forms of asceticism. And you know, that part of this story, in terms of us all relating to it, is also interesting because some of us are married. That's not even a word. Sorry, I'm really tired. Some of us have been in or are in marital relationships and have a commitment that way. Some of us are parents and have a commitment that way. And the idea of being so pulled by the spiritual search that you leave that all behind. That's was and is has been a question for me for a long time. How we reconcile all that. But it's true that that longing is so strong. And frankly, I had a friend at Zen Mountain Center, Yokoji Zen Mountain Center, who left her 4 children and left her husband with them and traveled across the country and started practicing Zen. And I did not see her family until she was dying. So it is done by men and women. And so just to continue, I won't go on and on about the story, but just to continue, there's a couple other points I think that are important, which is that the Buddha does all these ascetic practices. And, you know, as it said, he gets down to eating 1 uncooked rice grain so that the front of his chest and the back of his back could touch. Yeah, the expression on your face says it all. I know. And almost dies, right? He collapses, and there's many variations of this story, but he collapses by the river. And this, you know, relatively probably innocent or young woman comes along, and here's this person who's been like trying to do this thing so hard and everything, and here's Prajna. Here comes Prajna going, "You're gonna die. Drink some rice milk." And that makes the Buddha realize that that to carve a path between indulgence and deprivation is the way, which is very instructive for all of us, I think. So that change, that turns everything for him. It's not about doing, you know, getting the whatever that thing is that you hit yourself with, the self-flagellation. It's that it isn't about literally killing this one to try to understand how do I see my life in a bigger way. So he says, okay, I'm going to do moderation here, but still, very, very strong. I'm going to sit down under this tree. And I meant to look it back up again, what kind of tree it is in reality in India. But we call it the Bodhi tree because that's where he had his awakening experience. I think it's a ficus, but I'm not sure. Yes, you think so?
I'm under the same impression, but also didn't.
Yeah, and
it's a type of fig tree.
Yeah, and I've seen them in India. Like these things are like huge. So it feels like it would be very sheltering, I guess is the word that comes to mind. And just says, I'm gonna sit down here and I'm not gonna leave until I figure it out. And again, there's many different ideas about this legend. Some say it was 6 years, some say it was 6 months, some say it was 6 days, which kind of fits with us for Sashin. But I'm not going to move until I figure it out. And as Muke talked about last night, in this time of sitting down, they talk about, vines grow in his hair and the bird's nest. And, you can only imagine he's sitting hard. And even at that, I'm going to say he, she, they, who knows, So sitting hard, sitting very focused. And then all these visions come. It's funny. Oh my God, I won't say that. Just all these visions come. And so, and the visions are put in the voice of Mara, trying to delude the Buddha, trying to distract the Buddha from this awakening experience. So it's kind of like the demon king. So we were talking about in another case, the demon king. And so it's the dancing girls and the whole world of sensuality and sexuality and lust. And then it's armies seeing his whole family and kingdom destroyed. And anything that would be dear to him, and it's kind of put to him like this is what's gonna happen if you don't stop. And we all encounter that too. My knee hurts so bad that I'm convinced that I'm going to need orthopedic surgery if I don't move, right? You ever had that thought or something along those lines? Just the challenge of staying with it is what I'm trying to say. And of course, mostly the delusions or the obstacles are in our own mind. Mostly, there's definitely practicalities, but the majority of it is what we conjure up for ourselves, of why I can't do this thing, why I can't stick with it. Because we have that same longing. And this is a really big point that came up for me, I think just last night when we were sitting, is I just was kind of imagining myself under the Bodhi tree and this feeling of just this human nature of really wanting to understand what our life is. And yes, we can, and I think it is appropriate that on probably many days, but on Bodhi Day and this whole Ruhatsu leading up to the morning of the 8th of December, that we feel great gratitude and great respect and great honoring. 2,500 years ago, this person, just like us, in a fleshy body, sat down under this tree and said, I will not move until I understand what my life is about. And the echoing of that is right here, right now with us as this, and is around the world. Many sanghas sat Rohatsu all around the world with us in the last 7 days. But that this was just a human being that did this. And that is our life too. And that is our longing too. And that is our already birthright. It is already who we are. And that's exactly what the Buddha found out. He said, so I do recommend, I just wanted to mention this because maybe not everybody is aware. Most of you are, I'm sure. But there's the Yasutani lectures, introductory lectures about Zen. And we used to use them as the curriculum for introduction to Zen practice. And it's free. You can just Google Yasutani lectures, and there's a free PDF that you can download. And I just highly recommend that anybody who hasn't looked at it or looked at it recently have a look, because they're great. So I just had some things I copied out of there. There's, of course, lots of different interpretations of what the Buddha said, because only the Buddha was there. So it's just what he told people, he said, I guess, and got written down. Wonder of wonders, intrinsically all living beings are Buddhas, endowed with wisdom and virtue. But because people's minds have become inverted through delusive thinking, they fail to perceive this. So that's in the Avatamsaka Sutra, which is reputedly the first things the Buddha said. And Yasutani goes on. This is in Avatamsaka Sutra. Yes, how truly marvelous that all human beings, clever or stupid, male or female, ugly or beautiful, are whole and complete just as they are. Yet human beings, restless and anxious, live half-praised existences because their minds, heavily encrusted with delusion, are turned topsy-turvy. So I think we can all relate with that, and just this, it gets so complicated, but just this simple reality that we are intrinsically whole and complete as we are. And our perception that we're not is delusion. And, I've heard it said a bunch of times recently that the Buddha taught two things: suffering and the cause of suffering. So, one of the names for the Buddha is the medicine Buddha. So this is the medicine. This is the medicine to say, this is the source of our suffering, and this is how we alleviate it for ourselves: clinging and aversion. And so, of course, there's the two sides. There's the whole, complete, and perfect, exactly as we are. And then the very famous quote from Suzuki Roshi, but we could all use a little improvement, So it's not one or the other. It's not like, okay, I know I'm whole and perfect, complete, perfect the way I am. Don't anybody criticize me. I will never make a mistake. Oh my God. That's another famous saying, being a Zen master is just making one mistake after another. And maybe the Zen master part of it is you notice it a little bit faster. So one of the things I wasn't aware of is that Rohatsu and Bodhi Day are quite associated with Mahayana Buddhism, which comes along about 500 years after the Buddha passes. And the keystone of Mahayana Buddhism is the Bodhisattva vow. So, there's from a Mahayanist perspective, it's the lesser vehicle and the greater vehicle, which, is probably not such nice language for Hinayana people. But the point I wanted to make about that, so the keystone or the central part of the Bodhisattva vow is that we see that we're not separate from others. And so when we have any kind of understanding, I'm not talking about blow the top of your head off realization. I'm just talking about basic wisdom, basic insight, that it's natural when wisdom occurs that we share it with others. It's natural that we express compassion. Two parts of the same thing. So, just imagine if you were completely, absolutely, 110% sure that you were whole and complete as you are, that you are whole and complete as you are. The first impulse that comes up is compassion. The first thing to do is to try to help, right? So when we think about going back to thinking about the lifetime of the Buddha, and Mukhe was talking about this last night, there was basically you just said, well, I think I'll just pass into parinirvana now. Done, check. And but all the different beings came and said, no, you need to help others now. All this effort to have this understanding yourself. You can't just die. So 49 years of giving Dharma talks and traveling, being a community together, doing Ango and sitting during the rainy season so that you don't step on bugs. The origin of Ango, of the rains retreat, but as a community. And I loved, and it was mentioned this morning, Mukhe mentioning last night the quote from Thich Nhat Hanh that he thought that Maitreya, the future Buddha, was going to be community. And I feel emotion welling up in me about that the place that we're at, and I think everybody here is in this country right now, the place that we're at seems to really, really call for our willingness to connect as community. And, some of us have had to go through our shock and lick our wounds. And I do worry a bit about just isolating in that. I think there is an opportunity, maybe when things blow up so bad, maybe there's an opportunity for something underneath that to start knitting together. And so that the future, Maitreya, the Buddha of the future, is community. And we've been, some of us worked on the last final edits of a book that's going to be a Seisen's compilation of 20 of her talks in a book form. And she talked, one of the talks is about collective awakening. And when you think about it, what other kind of awakening is there? It's intrinsically a collective awakening. Because we awaken to collectiveness. to non-specificity, to impermanence, to ungraspableness. So, I was appreciating this mention that that Bodhi Day is kind of very associated with Mahayana Buddhism, and that's us. That's our practice in the Bodhisattva vow. And then just to bring the other side up for just a sec, which is, I remember Maizumi Roshi saying, one of his, he had this very much favorite expression, which was appreciate your life, appreciate your life. And I remember one time I've told the story before, but maybe you haven't been there, hopefully. But I remember one time I was like, and I think you'll relate to this. I was so distraught about not being able to see my true nature and just feeling like I was failing. I've been distraught about that many, many times. But I just remember I just was so upset and I was crying, and he came out of the Dokusan room and he's, Kyoshin, what's wrong? And I said something to that effect. And I just remember him saying, you're perfectly fine. You're perfectly fine. And at the time, I felt like it was a consolation prize. I felt like he was patting me on the head and saying, poor little Kyoshin, this is just about as good as you can do. And it wasn't. And him saying, he would say, appreciate your life, appreciate yourself, but not the way you're usually to think of yourself. Not the small way you're used to thinking of yourself. Appreciate your life in the biggest way possible. And in the biggest way impossible for us to imagine. So Bodhi Day, believe it or not, will eventually end. I can show you looking like Miss Wilting over there. Some of us, myself not included, have been up all night, as well as sitting all week. Yeah, at least your son is still alive, don't worry. He's just trying to recuperate before his music gig this afternoon. So Bodhi Day will end, but the practice doesn't. And I just think that and I'm saying this to myself as much as anybody else, so hopefully it relates with you as well. We can honor the Buddha, we can admire his, her, they accomplishment, but we are all equally in doubt. And we express our great perfection as we do. And it is incomprehensible, the impact of that. And I think towards the end of a Dharma talk this week, Choa said, maybe it was at the beginning, he said something about, he really had faith that our practice brings peace. And I think that we know that at times anyway, it brings peace to ourselves. But I share his confidence that the more we still these demons and we still Mara in ourselves and really appreciate the fullness of our lives, it does bring peace to the world. And that's the fulfillment of our Bodhisattva vow. And we all do it in our own small and big ways. We're not going to be Gautama. His time was then. But our time is now. And it's immeasurable. So happy Bodhi Day. And please, 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 like my Zini Roshi used to always like to say, please steadily keep on going.